Hi everyone, it's Anne here from Music Discoveries. Today, let's pretend that we're doing a little bit of composing. Let's say we have a simple triad pattern that's moving from the left hand to the right hand. This could be the beginning of a little introduction to your song. All it is E, G, C, and another E, G, C copying in the right hand. Nice and simple. Pretty on the harp though, isn't it? So the question is, how are we going to write that down in our music notation? Or maybe the better question is, can you think of a few different ways that this could be written down? So all it is 6/8 notes, one after another. So in our video today, we'll look at a few different options, and you can see the pros and the cons for using each one. Now, the first thing that we have to do is figure out what the time signature is going to be. So it all depends on how I'm counting and feeling those eighth notes. If I decide to count and feel 1 and 2 and 3 and, then I'm going to be in 3/4 time. But if I decide to count it in 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that has a slightly different feel, and that's going to be 6/8 time. Now, if I choose 3/4 time, that means that there are 3 quarter note beats in every measure, and those quarter notes will subdivide into pairs of eighth notes. So the eighth notes will beam together in pairs like this, and you feel those 3 pairs of eighth notes when you play it. 1 and 2 and 3 and. If I choose 6/8, that means that there are 6 eighth note beats in every measure. And we group the eighth notes into groups of 3s, and you're going to feel 2 groups of 3s like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 2 time signatures have a slightly different feel, and you have to decide what you're doing before you start to write things down in your notation software or by hand if you're doing it that way. It's not that one is right and one is wrong, it's just that that's a decision that you have to make. So I'm going to choose 3/4 time. I'm going to choose for our pattern to feel 1 and 2 and 3 and. And so I've written this out, I've started to write this out on the staff, just with the note heads in 3/4 time. Now, we already said that these are eighth notes, so I could add the tails and the flags or tails onto the notes to make them single eighth notes. I could complete the measure a little bit more fully by adding the eighth rests. I don't know about you, but this is starting to look a little bit complicated, isn't it? And the reason why is it's much easier to process music when the notes are grouped together into meaningful pairs. So, well, what would happen if we group together the first 3 eighth notes in the left hand, and we'll group the 3 eighth notes in the right hand? Here's what that looks like. Oh, well, that's really tidy, isn't it? That's a lot easier to read. But wait a minute. Doesn't that look an awful lot like the groups of 3s that we talked about in 6/8 time? In 6/8 time, the eighth notes are grouped into groups of 3s. So this one is not the best option. It's reading as 6/8 instead of 3/4. In 3/4 time, we want those eighth notes to come in pairs. So here's one solution. This is getting us a little bit closer. So our beat 1 and has been paired. So the third eighth note has to be a single with a flag. Then over to the right hand, I did a pair of eighth notes and then a single. So it's a nice little repeating pattern, but wait a minute, there's something wrong with this too. And I remember back on our original graphic, it showed that we need to put the pair on 3 and, not and 3. So here's a better solution. So this is a possible solution, and you can see here is a sample of one of my songs called Sweet Blessings, and I use this notation for this particular song. It sounds like... and so on. Now, that might look a little bit cluttered. I think there's probably a better way or another possible way that we could notate to make it look even simpler. So let's take a look at another solution. So what if we took the left hand, rests, let's remove those and turn the third eighth note into a half note like this. That looks very simple, doesn't it? Now, this is a situation that I prefer to use if the right hand is functioning as melody rather than the two hands functioning as broken arpeggios. And here's an example from one of my songs called In the Clouds. You can see right there in measure 5, I've done the 2/8 and a half note in the left hand. And then the right hand follows in, but the right hand is functioning as melody here. But I think in this particular situation, that kind of notation looks very nice and makes a lot of sense. Now here's another solution for you, and I know that this one makes some of you scratch your head because you see this unusual looking beam in the middle of the measure. This is called a cross staff beam. And so what this does is it makes sure that we can still see the pairs of eighth notes rather than using the individual eighth note in the left hand in the third note and the individual eighth note in the right hand in the first note. We can group them together into a cross staff beam. You play it exactly the same way. 3 notes in the left hand, 3 notes in the left hand, and 3 notes in the right hand. It doesn't change a thing about how it's played, but visually it lets us see the pairs of eighth notes, which is a good thing for processing rhythm. And I can also remove the rests, which cleans up the measure quite a lot, doesn't it? Here's an example, another example from In the Clouds. This is from the introduction. And here the hands are just alternating broken triad patterns. So this is a really good spot to use the cross staff beam to simplify the measure and to make it easier to see those pairs of eighth notes for counting. Now, while we're talking about cross staff beamings, there's one more situation which is kind of interesting. If your measure is completely full of eighth notes, if you have 6 eighth notes in the measure, you are allowed to beam them all together. So here I used cross staff beaming across the entire group of 6 eighth notes, and I think that looks really nice as well. Here it is in the context of one of my arrangements. This is It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, and we just have broken triad patterns shared between the hands, and so that cross staff beam is another really good solution to simplify the score. So it looks like 4 solutions have emerged. Take a look at the 4 of them side by side and take a minute to think about them. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer, and I hope that you'll keep this in mind next time you're composing and thinking about how you will notate your own music. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.